Good morning, and welcome back to this week's this week's episode of Live at the Legislature, where every week we speak with House members and senators from the legislative minority to talk about issues going around the state capitol. This week's guest is Representative Val Okimoto. She represents District 36, which encompasses Mililani Mauka, and Waipio Acres. She's also a member of the Committee on Lower and Higher Ed, Tourism and International Affairs, and Transportation. Rep. Okimoto, good morning.
Good morning, Kaeo.
So, as we heard from our friends in the Senate in the last segment, they were talking about the joint legislative package, which covers, universal pre-K, affordable housing, and a $13 minimum wage. Did you have any thoughts on that initially when that came out?
Yeah, thank you for asking that. I think, it was very exciting to see that they were coming out with a package. I think for me, whenever a bill comes through my office or across my desk, I'm a pragmatist. The first thing I ask is, where is the money coming from? There were really great ideas that were thrown out there. However, I felt like the details weren't clearly specified. And as a member of the Lower and Higher Education Committee, I do have great, interest in what happens with our Department of Education here. I think what's more interesting versus who was in the room that day was who wasn't there. And since that message was shared or that announcement was made, I did wonder, why the DOE wasn't present, or why the EOEL wasn't present. I think it's really important as they have this discussion moving forward, especially this session, that all parties, all offices involved in this situation or in this decision making, they're all included in the conversation. That's something I think is very crucial.
And for those of you, or those of the folks at home who don't know, you are a former special education teacher.
Correct.
And so that gives you kind of a unique perspective being on that committee. Can you talk a little bit about just the briefings that you had before session, and then there's been a lot of talk about raising teachers' pay, and there's been a couple of bills that I'll ask about next.
Right, yeah, you hit it right on the nose. When I came into here, at heart, I still am an educator, and as many times as possible, I'll still go and work in the classrooms, either volunteering or substitute teaching. But I did come from the DOE system where I was a full-time special education teacher. I was a student myself, in the public school system. My girls go to public school in Mililani Mauka. So I have a special place, and it's really important for me to support teachers, to support education, to support our students. And so while I'm always willing to fight and find ways to fund our teaching, to fund our educators, to fund, the system here, I have to ask, where are we getting the money from? I think that's the hard question, one of the hard questions that has to be asked and addressed. Although, a lot of my friends, family, they're teachers. They're in the system now, and coming from the classroom myself, I think we need to find ways that we can support our teachers in the classrooms as well as, in their pocketbooks. But I go back to being fiscally responsible. How are we going to find the funds to do this?
Right, and a couple of years back, we had the constitutional amendment vote to levy a tax on, it was, I think, investment properties. And so this year, the Speaker had introduced another constitutional amendment that would allow the Board of Education to levy property taxes with the counties. Did you have any thoughts on that?
I did. I remember when the CONAM came out, and it was a conflict for me because, again, I support our teachers financially. However, I have issue with putting on the backs of every taxpayer here in our state. You're right. A recent study, I think, came out this morning that 2/3 of our residents are struggling financially, and so I don't know how we can feasibly do this with the thousands of homeless people that we have, or upon the thousands we're losing our talent. They have to move to the mainland because they can't afford to live here. So I do have concerns with how we're going to fund the teacher increase. I don't support taxes, unnecessary taxes. I think the property taxes will cause more burdens on the everyday person, and the the statistics we heard today, verify that. So I do have issues with that. I think we have to make tough decisions. I think we have to find the money. We have to, as a government, we need to be more responsible and accountable for the fundings that the taxpayers entrust with us. We are the legislature legislators that they trust with their money, and so we have to take that responsibility seriously and act accordingly.
As a working mother who doesn't live in the Honolulu proper area, the counties are asking for a study which would essentially or potentially give them the power to levy a fee during peak traffic hours. So as someone who doesn't live in town, how does that affect you, and how do you think it affects your constituents?
I've been in office for a little over a year now. That's probably my least favorite thing about this position, is having to sit in traffic coming from Mililani Mauka. It's not fun, and so I do, I feel for the people who live outside of here, Central Oahu. We sacrifice every day time away from our families, from our loved ones, to fulfill our responsibilities, but we need to consider the people that live outside of Central Oahu. I think that it will greatly impact them. The cost of living here is already so high. We just mentioned the statistics on 2/3 of our residents who are financially unstable, and now we're going to have another fee placed on people who are working so hard. These are people that we know and love, our family, our friends, and you're right, the farther we move out of Central Oahu, it impacts us as residents of this beautiful state, this beautiful island, but I do have issues with that. I have concerns, questions, and you're right, it is not fun, and I think quality of life needs to be addressed, both financially, but also the quality of the time that we're spending and we're sacrificing.
Sure, and we've got a couple of minutes left, so this is your second session in office. Tell us a little bit about what's going on in your community, some of the bills that you've introduced this year. I think you had mentioned before off camera that you have a survey in your district.
Correct. So I'm really excited. We have a newsletter that goes out every month, and this month we are targeting my entire district. So I'm encouraging those who are in Mililani Mauka, Mililani Town, and Waipio Acres that belong to House District 36 to please answer the survey. We have a link. You can find it on the website, but also the newsletter that goes home. Please fill out that survey. I'm excited. I'm really optimistic this year, hoping that our bills will be heard. If not, we really want to hear the input of my constituents, because that helps us in voting and voting appropriately. When I got into this position a year ago, I take it seriously. I represent my constituents, and that's very important to me, so I want to represent properly.
And what are some of the issues that you're focusing on in your bill package?
There's issues on cost of living, supporting teachers. One thing that we just at the end of the deadline, and aligns with Representative San Bonaventura's issues of mental health, is addressing this mental health issue, helping our police officers, make it more feasible for them to address the instances of mental health, and increasing funding, appropriating funds for mental health facilities, having a TRO database. These are things that we need to address, because we don't want to see, our loved ones having their lives or properties damaged or hurt.
Representative Okimoto, thank you for joining us this morning. To the viewers at home, thank you for joining us this week. For more updates from the minority side, you can follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at High House GOP.
What are you doing? We have to go. I'm gonna be late for work.
It's Tuesday morning. I gotta record live at the legislature on Alelo. Senate and House leadership discussing what's happening at the state capitol.
So just watch it on the news tonight. Come on, let's go.
Hey, this is like getting the news before it's news. If only I could get this remote to work.
There. Can we go now?
No DVR? No problem. Watch Wednesday evenings at 7 p.m. on Channel 49.